Might we see another Republican contender in the race for the White House? Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina heads to Iowa on Wednesday. This is fueling speculation. He's weighing a White House bid as Iowa is the first state in the GOP presidential nomination process. Last week, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley announced she's running, becoming the first official challenger to former President Donald Trump for the GOP nomination. This morning, she dodged questions about how her policies would differ from the former president's.
Where do you two differ?
I don't focus on President Trump, and it's amazing that the media wants to talk about that so much.
But you will have to get through the GOP primary. You will have to focus on him and Governor DeSantis or anybody else who gets in. To get to President Trump, you will have to get through that field.
My announcement was to a few thousand people in South Carolina. I just had packed rooms in New Hampshire. Not one person asked me about President Trump.
Joining me now to talk about this, Vanity Fair special correspondent Molly Jong-Fast and CNN commentator and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. Ladies, thanks so much for being on this afternoon. Appreciate it so much. Molly, let me start with you first. I mean, that comment from former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, essentially, dodging this question about where she differs when it comes to policy positions with the former president. This is going to be a recurring problem, it sounds, for the GOP field overall, it seems.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole thing is going to be a primary now. So Nikki Haley has survived by ignoring Trump and being, very sort of passive and complimentary towards him. Now he's going to have to go against her. She's going to have to go against him, and she's going to have to woo primary voters. And these primary voters are sort of addicted to Trump and this kind of authoritarian strongman thing. So I don't know how she manages to ignore the guy who basically has sort of a spell on these primary voters.
Alice, what do you think of that? And also South Carolina, another South Carolina Republican politician, Tim Scott, heading to Iowa this week. That's intriguing.
It is. He's going to listen to the people of Iowa on a listening tour. And usually when you listen, you're beginning the wooing phase of a relationship with voters. And look, I think it's really important. Molly is 100% correct that there's many of Trump's supporters are extremely all in on Donald Trump, and they will continue to support him. But that's just a portion of the primary voters. Many of them are looking elsewhere. Many of them are saying it's time to turn the page on Donald Trump. It's time to find someone who will espouse his policies on the Republican Party supports, which is focusing on the economy and inflation and security and education. Focus on those policies, but do so in a less toxic tone and a more positive way. And I think what we saw with Nikki Haley in her announcement speech, she has a more positive tone. She wants a generational change for this country, and not just in terms of age, but in tactic. And we're also going to see the similar tone from Tim Scott, Senator also from South Carolina, as he goes out there and connects with the people. Look, to be quite honest, the general primary voter is looking for the policies at this point. And many of these candidates share the same policies. But the real test will be, can they convey what they do on television or in a donor meeting? Can they convey that to the voters? Are they able to go out to Iowa and connect with the voters and let the voters think they really understand what they're going through? And Jim, you know how it works, and Molly, you do as well. You have to be able to go to Iowa State Fair. You have to be able to go to the Red Arrow Diner in Manchester and really connect with the voters. And that's the key test for all of these candidates.
There's a lot of pizza ranches between now and the Iowa caucuses for these politicians.
True.
Molly, one of the calling cards of a Donald Trump campaign are these personal attacks on his opponents. And the larger the field, the more the mud that we're going to be watching getting thrown around. He's saved almost all of his zingers these days for Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who's widely suspected to be interested in throwing his hat in the ring as well. He's told his supporters, Trump has, that he will no longer refer to the Florida governor as, quote, Meatball Ron. That was his latest insult. I mean, it's pretty early on for the nicknames, but this is what Trump does.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ron DeSantis is a tremendously appealing to these Trump supporters, and he's kind of promised the donor class Trumpism without Trump, which is kind of their dream, right? None of the unforced errors of Trumpism. I mean, in my mind, the candidacies of a Nikki Haley and the more normal Republicans are something of the sort of 2004s, before the Republican Party took this much more right-leaning, move. So, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see. But I think Trump is right. He knows his biggest competition is Ron DeSantis.
And Alice, what do you think? I mean, there's also some CNN reporting that some conservatives are worried that DeSantis has maybe gone a little too far in his fight against quote unquote wokeness, that his approach is heavy-handed as he goes on the attack against Disney, on what teachers can say in the classroom, this recent fight over the College Board AP courses in Florida. And in these cases, it's DeSantis using the government of the state of Florida to go after some of these targets that he wants to go after. And that makes some conservatives a little nervous. What do you think?
It does, and I'm hearing exactly that. And Molly has a great piece on DeSantis in Vanity Fair. I encourage folks to go read that because it really breaks down this aspect of can someone engage in Trumpism and not be Trump? And the reality is you can't. And look, Ron DeSantis has increasing name ID. He is virtually neck and neck with Donald Trump in some of these key states. And he has been able to win over the large donor class. But that's not going to win him an Iowa caucus or certainly primaries in these early states. He has to be able to roll up his sleeves and really make a genuine connection with these people. That remains to be seen if he can do so. Look, also it's important to focus again on the policies that appeal to middle America. Again, that is the economic issues, that is security for our family, that is inflation and securing the border. I do think it's a good idea to dial back on some of the wokeism that has made him very popular and been successful in the state of Florida. I don't think that is going to really connect with the people in these early primary states. So that would be my suggestion, is focus more on the principal Republican policies and dial back on the wokeness.
Molly, but Nikki Haley, I noticed in the last couple of days, has gone after Ron DeSantis on this issue of going after these quote unquote woke targets, which, is, I mean, that expression in and of itself, we could talk about that all night. That's kind of a loaded term, but it does sound as though DeSantis is kind of making the debate on the Republican side on his terms, unlike what Trump is successful at doing, which is making it all about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Alice said is a good point, though. At these early primaries, I mean, think about all the people we thought would, sweep in and snag the nomination. I mean, he's not, he still has to prove himself on the stump. And we saw DeSantis do a pretty miserable job during the debates with Charlie Crist. So I do think that he may just not be as good a retail politician. He hasn't really had to do that in Florida. He's kind of been, the Democratic Party in Florida is pretty weak. So I do think it is possible that, we just have to see how he does. And I think Alice really has a good point. There are like months and months and months of, pressing the flesh and people talking to each other and trying to woo voters. And I do think Nikki Haley, while she will have a very hard time winning the primary, she would be a much more appealing candidate in a general. And I think ultimately Republicans are really going to have a hard time because the person who wins the primary is probably going to be too conservative to win a general.
All right. Molly and Alice, we'll leave it there. We'll come back to this again, I'm sure soon enough. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.